Before we begin tonight's story, you must understand who Leo was. Leo was a man who lived through his phone screen. His bedroom was filled with horror movie posters and fake, haunted dolls he bought online. He didn't just watch scary movies, he obsessed over them until he thought he was an expert. He spent his nights on the internet laughing at people who were truly afraid of ghosts. To Leo, spirits were just a joke, a way to get more views and likes on his videos. He believed that because he knew all the tricks used in movies, nothing in the real world could ever hurt him. He walked into the dark with a camera and a smug smile, thinking he was the boss of the monsters. He never realized that in the real world, the darkness doesn't follow a script, and it doesn't care about your rules. Leo arrived at the Blackwood house just as the sun was going down. The house looked thick. Its wood was gray and peeling, and the windows looked like empty, staring eyes. There was no wind, but the air felt heavy and thick. Leo stepped onto the porch, and the wood let out a loud, high scream. He adjusted his camera and looked into the lens with a cocky grin. He told his thousands of viewers that the house was just a rotting pile of trash and that he wasn't afraid of any weak spirits. He pushed the front door open, and a horrible smell hit him. It smelled like old dirt, rotten meat, and something very old. Leo paused for a second, his heart starting to race, but he saw the number of people watching his video going up. His greed for fame was stronger than his fear. He walked into the hallway, his flashlight cutting through the deep blackness. He pointed his light at old family photos on the wall. The eyes in the pictures had been scratched out. Leo laughed and told his audience it was just a cool effect, even though the scratches looked like they had just been made. As he walked deeper into the house, the air felt oily against his skin. Every time he turned around, he felt like someone was standing right behind him, breathing on his neck. He would spin around with his light, but he only saw shadows. These shadows seemed to move on their own, sliding across the walls slower than they should. He began to shout at the house, his voice sounding shaky and loud. He kicked a chair and watched it break, yelling that the ghosts were cowards. He was trying to prove he was still in charge, but the house felt like it was slowly closing in on him. The walk to the attic was a nightmare. The stairs were covered in a black, sticky slime. With every step, he heard a heavy thump-thump coming from inside the walls, like a giant heart beating. The air turned freezing cold. It wasn't a normal cold, it was a damp chill that felt like it was sucking the life out of his body. He reached the attic door and pushed it open. The hinges made a sound that didn't sound like metal, it sounded like a human groaning in pain. In the middle of the attic, Leo did his final act of being a fool. He poured a circle of salt on the floor, but then he spat on it and kicked it away with his boot, laughing at the idea of protection. He pulled out a spirit board, his hands shaking from the cold. He didn't ask questions, he shouted insults. He told the spirits to show their faces, calling them weak and forgotten. He spent 20 minutes screaming into the dark, his face red and sweaty even though the room was freezing. He was a man drowning in his own ego, using a camera like a shield. Then, the world went completely silent. It was a silence so deep it hurt his ears. The thumping in the walls stopped. Even the sound of Leo's own breathing vanished. Then, a new sound started in the corners, a wet, tearing noise. The attic door didn't just slam shut, it vanished into the wall, leaving no way out. The salt on the floor began to hiss and turn black, bubbling like acid until it disappeared into the wood. From the shadows, something began to crawl. It didn't have a normal shape, it was a moving mass of black oil that twitched like a dying bug. It rose up, standing much taller than Leo. As it moved, the light from his camera began to fade. The shadows weren't just blocking the light, they were eating it. Leo fell to his knees. All his movie knowledge was useless now. He tried to pray, but he couldn't speak. He looked into the middle of the shadow and saw hundreds of faces. People who had died in that house. Their mouths were sewn shut, and their eyes were wide with a terror that never ended. The shadow reached out with long, thin black needles. They poked into Leo's skin, but they didn't draw blood. Instead, they drew out his soul. He felt his mind being pulled apart. He saw his own memories disappearing one by one. A voice exploded inside his head, sounding like a million insects crawling on paper. It told him that since he wanted to see the dark so badly, he would now become a part of it. It told him his fame meant nothing and his life was now a permanent nightmare. The shadow rushed into his mouth and eyes, filling him with 1,000 years of pain and loneliness. His body twisted and shook as his mind was crushed. His eyes turned solid, shiny black. The camera fell to the floor, recording one last thing. Leo standing perfectly still, his head tilted to the side at a broken angle, with a wide, jagged smile on a face that was no longer his own. The next morning, the house was silent. A hiker found the camera outside, but there was no body, only a pile of gray ash in the attic. The video was gone, replaced by 20 minutes of a high-pitched scream that never stopped for breath. Leo was gone, erased from the world he tried to mock. He wanted to be the hero of a scary story, but he learned the truth. In the real dark, there are no heroes. There is only the hunger. Never play with things you do not understand. When you treat the spirit world like a game, you lose.